4 years ago, a Padraic Colum Gathering committee was established in this very room, which is the headquarters for Longford County Library and Archives. Padraic Colum is one of Longford's best loved writers, and surrounding us here is all his work and indeed a lovely portrait of Padraic. It was here that our committee first met the sparkling and inspiring Clíona Colum Ní Shúilleabháin, grandniece of Padraic Colum. And Clíona quickly became the beating heart and guiding hand of our committee. It was through her we met all the wonderful Colum cousins spread around the globe, especially the Australian and Canadian branch of the family, and of course her cousins here in Ireland, and the two most senior and treasured members of the family, Kieran Colum over in Strokestown and Maisie Colum in London. We were truly shocked and saddened when we heard a couple of months ago about Clíona's untimely death. Our thoughts are very much with Tony at this very, very sad time, and we want to remember Clíona in a very special way at this year's gathering. Culla Salva Clíona.
Padraic Colum. I always say Padraic Colum, but we always used to call him Uncle Padraic. He used to come home most of the winters when I was a young child in the 60s, and he'd stay with my Aunt Susie in Ranelagh, and he'd be fed out in our house. So we saw quite a lot from him at that time. And this is where my mother came in. That's my mother, little child. And Uncle Padraic had a great influence on the family always, because even though they left quite early to go to America and then they were in France and everything, they kept up their links. But sometimes he would, because he'd suddenly remember one of his theories, that wasn't a literary one, that a cigarette would help your digestion. So when he remembered that, I would be allowed to get down from the table, run around to the shop and buy 2 cigarettes and bring them home so that he could smoke them. So my memory of him is that. And you can see the black hair.
Well, my name is Peter Sean Colum, and I've come from Australia. My grandfather was Padraic Colum's brother, so that makes me his great nephew. So my father was John Colum, and my mum's travelled with me. She's 86 next birthday, and she's travelled with me from Australia, and we've made a big trip of it. Actually, we've gone all down through England and Scotland, and now we're in Ireland. So we're having a great time, and look, the people are wonderful.
So this is the Colum family. The immediate Padraic Colum is the young man in the middle at the top there. He's the poet, and they're his sisters and brothers around them, and we'll meet them as we go through this presentation. Next one is a picture I didn't have the last time I was here. I found this among some of my mother's papers. She was Maura and Maisie. She was also Maisie Colum. It's confusing, there are a few Maisie. There's a Maisie here, but my mother's also Maisie. So when I say Maisie, Maura Colum, I call her Maura O'Sullivan. My mother, she had these papers together because she organised centenary celebrations. And I found this picture amongst them, and I think it might be the workhouse master, Padraic Colum. So Padraic Colum's father was the workhouse master in Longford. He came as a teacher there, and then he became master of the workhouse. Anyway, things moved on from there. But if anybody knows for sure whether that's the workhouse master, they'd let me know. So these are Padraic Colum, the workhouse master's brothers and sisters. He came from a large family, obviously. Josephine, his oldest sister on the left-hand side there, Maria Josephine, she went to the States, and she sponsored a lot of people to come into the States after her, and she invited Padraic, the writer, and his wife Molly to come to the States when they got married. The next person down there is Dan, who's the ancestor of our Maisie here, and Miriam and Kieran. He was from Athol. Then there was Patrick, then there was all these aunts, Anne, Bridget, Alice, Rose, there was a Hugh, I've met some descendants of Hugh as well, Mary, Matthew and Maggie, who married Phil Harrigan. And Teresa Kelly did a great talk today on the big tree of Bunlahi, and Uncle Padraic actually dedicated the big tree to my many aunts, he said, notably to Josephine, Rose, Margaret, Mary, but especially to the one whose house neighboured the big tree, and at whose heart I heard much wise and witty discourse, my Auntie Anne. And he always loved those house gatherings, and that comes in again in his work. Uncle Padraic used to come and go to Ireland a lot. Once his wife died in 1957, Now they had come home in between, they came home in the 20s, they went to Paris in the 30s because she got a Guggenheim scholarship and they picked up with the Joyces there. They were in Ireland in the 40s when he was researching for a book he was to write on, he was asked to write on Arthur Griffith. But once his wife died in 1957, he came home almost every year, and it was always a big festival. When he did come, he would stay with his aunt, my Aunt Susie, his sister, and he would come out to us for meals. But there were always his letters coming and going. He was in his 80s in the 1960s, and he was saying he was coming, then he wasn't coming because he had a lecture to give, or he had a book to publish, or there was a play going on. So he was always active, and then he'd suddenly, we'd get something like this, say that came on a Sunday saying, I'm arriving on Friday, can you pick me up at the airport? And in that letter he also says he's been a little bit ill and tired, but when he gets back to New York, I'll have to make ready to go to Australia. So that's actually 40 years after his brother had gone to see Dick in Australia. So he did get to see Dick in Australia. When I knew them, they looked more like that. That's Uncle Padraic and Susie and my grandfather. And Dick would have still been alive then at that stage, but Fred and Eileen were gone. So Padraic, as I say, moved in all the literary circles, and this is a picture of Molly Colum by A.E. It's up in the Nyland Gallery in Sligo, and they've kindly allowed me to show that picture. It's pretty nice. I think she was very, very impressive head of hair, and she was a strong character. And this sweetheart and comrade, he wrote, I give you the waters, marches, and the forest bound, the valley filling cloud, the trees that set the rains beneath their roots out of this well. So that's what they would have looked at, maybe around that time. When they got married in 1912, their Aunt Josephine, or Padraic's Aunt Josephine, invited them to come to the States. They'd already taken out a lease on a house in Holt, and they wanted to stay there for the year and see could they make their way in Ireland. But they found that they couldn't. But Josephine wrote to them. She actually wrote to Molly because she said, and if you remember, his name was Patrick Joseph, so in the family he was called Joe early on. She says, tell me exactly what you think of my proposition, said Josephine to Molly, about coming to America. Because if I leave it to Joe, he will forget. She actually underlines that twice in the letter, I'm afraid. Write soon and say you're coming. And then they were changing their names at this time, and she says, I see I spelled Padraic wrong on the envelope. So they did go, as I said, to the States. They came, visited Ireland a lot, but then Mary Colum died in 1957. And Padraic Colum wrote a poem where he's standing on O'Connell Street Bridge at the Liffey, and he's looking back towards the Thomas More statue, which is back up there again now in Western Row in Dublin. And he's referring to his mother had loved the Moors melodies, so he knew all about the Moors melodies, and he's referring to Often a Steady Night in this particular poem that he writes for Molly, saying, no more than he of banquet hall deserted, am I in hope of one to reappear. Expecting no one, regretting this, that you had come so often to where I crossed, and that so seldom I, moved from set purpose, made a festival of her.
On behalf of Longford County Council and Padraic Committee, we plant this tree especially in the memory of Clíona Ní Shúilleabháin. Fiona was a librarian, like Mary here, and she started in 1987 in Trinity College in Dublin, and she also worked in the Long Room. She had a fantastic, she was a linguist, but the Irish language was her absolute favourite, and unfortunately she passed away last February, way too early, and in that respect we especially remember and send our condolences to her husband Tony. She was a stalwart of Padraic Colum's works. Her mother before, she was a grandniece of Padraic Colum's. Her mother, Maura, was a niece who also worked as a librarian in the medical library in UCD on Earlsford Terrace, where I went to college for a while. And after that, Maura originally was the custodian of the Padraic Colum literary heritage, and so Clíona took that on. And she had a tremendous knowledge, and she had memories directly of Padraic Colum visiting, and he was living in America most of the time when she was there, but when he came home he obviously visited his nieces, who was her mother, and We're sorry that Clíona is not with us anymore, and in her memory we plant this tree, the big tree of Unlahi, which was part of a collection of stories from my own countryside. So with that, we plant the tree.
David, you do it.
We're just spreading the blame.
Yeah, it doesn't grow, is it?
Yeah.
Plenty of good clay there. Good.
You can spot the experienced gardeners, can you, Brendan?
Yeah.
This man now here has potential.
Can you see much potential there? Which one has the most potential, Brendan?
Well, Connor is the man.
Connor is the man, is he?
One of the children walk.